Every person desires a better life, one filled with joy, purpose, and success. Yet few realize that the life you live today is simply a reflection of the standards you've chosen to accept. If you expect little from yourself, life will give you little. But when you decide to raise your standards, when you set higher expectations for your behavior, your mindset, and your actions, you begin to attract more. A higher quality of life requires higher standards of living. This audiobook is about that transformation. It's about stepping out of mediocrity, about refusing to settle, and about choosing to become the person capable of attracting greatness. Together, we will explore the power of standards and how elevating them will elevate your entire existence. So, take a deep breath, open your mind, and let's begin the journey to raising your standards, and in doing so, attracting a better life. Standards are the unseen foundation of your life. They are the invisible lines that determine what you accept, what you reject, and what you strive toward. Every person lives by standards, whether they are aware of them or not. Some people hold themselves to extraordinary levels of excellence, while others quietly settle for far less than they are capable of. And here is the truth. The life you live right now is not an accident. It is a reflection of the standards you have chosen in the past. Think about it. The food you eat every day is determined by the standards you set for your health. The way you manage your time flows from the standards you have around discipline and productivity. The relationships in your life mirror the standards you've placed on how others are allowed to treat you. Even your income, your career, and your sense of peace are guided by the expectations you have for yourself. Some people hear this and feel a little uncomfortable because it reveals just how responsible we are for our own reality. But that discomfort is also the key to change. If your life today is shaped by your standards, then your life tomorrow can be transformed by raising them. Consider this. If someone believes they can't live without fast food, late nights, or endless distractions, their body and mind will eventually reflect that. But if another person decides, I hold myself to the standard of nourishing my body, sleeping with discipline, and protecting my focus, that decision alone sets them on an entirely different path. Their body changes, their energy changes, and over time, their entire life changes. This is why standards are powerful. They act like a compass, pointing you toward the future you are creating. You do not need to know every step of the journey. You simply need to raise the level of what you demand from yourself and watch how life aligns. Imagine two people starting a new job. The first one says, I'll do the bare minimum, just enough to get by. The second one says, I will exceed expectations. I will become valuable. I will treat this opportunity as if it matters deeply. At first, they may look similar, but in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years. The difference in their lives will be enormous. One remains stuck, unnoticed, frustrated. The other rises, attracts promotions, new opportunities, and respect. The difference is not talent. The difference is standards. And this is not only about work. The same principle applies to every area of life. In relationships, if you accept being treated with indifference or disrespect, you are teaching others that it is acceptable. But if you raise your standard and demand respect, kindness, and love, you create space for healthier, deeper, and more fulfilling connections. There is an old saying, "We get in life what we are willing to tolerate." Think about that. If you tolerate lateness, you'll be surrounded by people who don't respect your time. If you tolerate excuses from yourself, you'll live a life of delay and disappointment. But the moment you draw a line, the moment you say, "No more, I will not settle," you change everything. Raising your standards does not mean striving for perfection. Perfection is an illusion that often paralyzes people. Raising your standards is about progress. It's about saying, "I will no longer accept this level of living. I will demand more of myself." Even small adjustments create momentum. Deciding to wake up 1 hour earlier, to move your body daily, to speak with integrity, or to pursue a new goal. These may seem small at first, but they are profound declarations of who you are becoming. And when you consistently uphold higher standards, something remarkable happens. Life begins to match them. Opportunities appear. Confidence grows. You attract people who resonate with the energy of excellence. And slowly but surely, your reality shifts upward. So as you reflect on your own life, ask yourself, what standards have I been living by? Where have I been settling? And what must I demand of myself now if I want to create the life I dream of? Remember this, your standards are the architects of your destiny. When you raise them, you raise your life. Low standards always come with a price tag, one that is often invisible in the moment, but painfully clear in the long run. When we accept less than we are capable of, we silently sign a contract with mediocrity. It does not announce itself loudly, but it eats away at our confidence, our time, and our future. Think of someone who consistently allows themselves to show up late, both to work and in their personal life. At first, it may feel harmless. Just 5 minutes late to a meeting, just 10 minutes behind on an appointment. But what's really happening? That person is training themselves to accept a standard of lateness. Over time, this erodes trust with others, diminishes reliability, and eventually closes doors to opportunities they might never even know existed. Now, picture another person who tolerates disrespect in a relationship. Perhaps it begins with small comments, little dismissals that are brushed aside. At first, they convince themselves it's not a big deal. But slowly, something much larger is being sacrificed. their self-worth. By continuing to accept what is beneath them, they lower their internal compass of what love, respect, and partnership should look like. The longer they stay in that space, the more costly it becomes, not just emotionally, but spiritually. This is the quiet destruction of low standards. They rob you of what could have been. You see, every time you accept less than what you are capable of, you send a signal, not just to others, but to yourself. That signal says, "This is all I deserve." And life has a way of echoing back exactly what you declare. If you allow chaos in your finances, you will live in financial stress. If you accept laziness in your health, your body will decline long before it has to. If you settle for mediocrity in your career, doors of excellence will remain closed. The cost is not just the pain of what you endure, it's the opportunity you miss. You don't just pay with your present, you pay with your future. There's a story of two friends who started in the same place. Both had similar talents, similar dreams, and similar chances. But one decided that showing up good enough was acceptable, while the other demanded the best from himself. 10 years later, the difference was staggering. One lived with quiet regret, always wondering what might have been if he had aimed higher. The other was thriving, respected, and fulfilled, not because life handed him more opportunities, but because he had set higher standards, and those standards shaped his choices. This story is not unique. It happens every day, in every life. Some people choose to raise the bar, and others allow it to sink lower and lower, until they forget it ever existed. Ask yourself honestly, where am I settling right now? Maybe it's in your health. Perhaps you've told yourself that skipping exercise or eating poorly is acceptable. Maybe it's in your relationships, where you've tolerated neglect or dishonesty. Or perhaps it's in your career, where you've allowed yourself to stay in the comfort of the familiar, instead of stepping into growth. The good news is this: the cost of low standards can end the moment you choose differently. You do not need to carry yesterday's compromises into tomorrow. The very act of saying, "No more. I deserve better. I will expect more of myself," begins to rewrite the story. Raising your standards is not about arrogance. It is not about looking down on others. It is about self-respect. It is about declaring that your time, your health, your relationships, and your future are too valuable to be wasted on anything what uplifts you. So remember this truth: the cost of low standards is always higher than you think. You may not notice it today, but you will feel it tomorrow. And the longer you allow mediocrity, the more expensive it becomes. Decide now that you will no longer pay that price. Decide that your life is worth excellence. Because when you raise your standards, you don't just change your outcomes. You change your entire experience of living. Your standards are not random rules you create for yourself. They are born from something deeper. Your identity, the way you see yourself, sets the ceiling for what you will accept and the floor for what you will not. Think for a moment about the difference between wanting and being. Many people want to be healthier, but only those who see themselves as a healthy person consistently live that way. Many people want success, but only those who identify as disciplined, focused individuals actually achieve it. This is because your identity governs your behavior. You will never consistently act in a way that contradicts how you see yourself. If you see yourself as weak, you will find excuses to remain weak. If you see yourself as strong, you will push through challenges because it is simply who you are. Raising your standards, therefore, requires you to raise your identity. You must begin to redefine the way you think about yourself. It's not just about what you do. It's about who you believe you are. Imagine two students preparing for an exam. The first one says, "I'm not really a disciplined person, but I'll try to study tonight." The second one says, "I am a disciplined learner, and I don't miss study sessions." Which of these study students is more likely to follow through? The answer is clear: the one whose actions flow from identity, not from a temporary effort of willpower. This is why people often struggle with change. They attempt to change their behavior without changing their identity. They say things like, "I'm trying to quit smoking," or "I'm trying to exercise more." But notice the hidden belief: I am still a smoker. I am still a lazy person. Their identity is pulling them back to old standards, no matter how much they wish to improve. Instead, lasting transformation begins with a declaration of who you are becoming. Start small, but speak it daily. Say, "I am someone who values growth. I am someone who honors commitments. I am someone who refuses to settle for less than I deserve." The more you affirm this new identity, the more your actions will align. Of course, identity is not built overnight. It is forged through repetition and proof. Every time you make a decision that matches your new standard, you reinforce that identity. When you choose a healthy meal instead of fast food, you cast a vote for being a healthy person. When you rise early instead of sleeping in, you cast a vote for being a disciplined person. Identity grows one vote at a time. And here's the beauty: you don't need to win every vote. You simply need enough wins to tilt the scale. Even a person who stumbles but continues to identify with growth will eventually overcome the setbacks. Why? Because their identity keeps pulling them back toward higher standards. So, ask yourself right now, who do I believe I am? And who do I need to become to attract the life I desire? This reflection can be uncomfortable, but it is also liberating. The gap between your current identity and your desired identity is simply the work of raising your standards and proving them through action. Remember this truth: You do not get in life what you merely want. You get what you are willing to demand of yourself and what you are willing to become. So begin today. Don't just say, I want to be disciplined. Say, I am disciplined. Don't just say, I want to be confident. Say, I am confident. Don't just say, I want to live with purpose. Say, I am someone who lives with purpose. Your words become your beliefs. Your beliefs become your identity. And your identity shapes your standards. Once you shift how you see yourself, everything else begins to follow. Actions become easier. Standards rise naturally. And life aligns with the new version of you. Because at the end of the day, your identity is the foundation of your destiny. Raise your identity. Raise your standards. And the life you dream of will rise to meet you. Your life today is nothing more than the sum of the habits you've practiced yesterday. Habits are the silent builders of character, the quiet forces that sculpt your destiny. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your habits, and those habits are determined by the standards you set for yourself. Think about it for a moment. Someone who has high standards for health doesn't try to eat well. They simply do, because it is beneath their standards to poison their body. A person who has high standards for growth doesn't occasionally read or learn. They live in a state of continual improvement because that is their minimum expectation. Habits reflect the standards you demand of yourself. If your standards are low, your habits will be careless. If your standards are high, your habits will be disciplined. Let's take two individuals as an example. The first sets the standard that it's acceptable to hit the snooze button multiple times in the morning. This small choice ripples into the day. They start late, feel rushed, and approach tasks with a reactive mindset. Over time, this habit reinforces procrastination and stress. The second individual holds themselves to a higher standard. When the alarm rings, they rise. They may not always feel like it, but their standard dictates their action. This one small habit sets the tone for discipline, confidence, and control. The difference in outcome between these two people over weeks and months is staggering. This is the power of standards and habits. The small daily actions compound into completely different lives. And the truth is, you don't decide your future directly. You decide your habits, and your habits decide your future. So, ask yourself, what habits am I tolerating that are beneath the life I desire? Perhaps it's wasting hours, scrolling aimlessly on a phone, consuming food that depletes rather than nourishes, or speaking words that drain rather than uplift. These are not just habits. They are standards quietly lowering your potential. The good news is that you can choose differently. You can decide that from today forward, you no longer accept laziness, poor health, or negativity as part of your daily life. You can raise the standard and, with it, the habit. But here is an important truth. Raising your standards in habits is not about dramatic overnight changes. It's about consistent upgrades. If you raise the standard that you will walk for 10 minutes each morning, soon it grows into 20. If you raise the standard that you will spend at least 15 minutes a day learning something new, in a year you will have gained over 90 hours of growth. Small standards, repeated daily, create monumental change. Think of it like a compass. If you shift the direction by just 1 degree, you may not notice immediately, but over time, that 1 degree change leads you to an entirely different destination. Another key principle is to connect your habits with your identity. Instead of saying, "I want to exercise more," declare, "I am a person who values movement and health." Instead of saying, "I should save money," declare, "I am someone who respects my finances." When habits are tied to identity, they become non-negotiable. You don't force them, you embody them. This is why some people seem naturally disciplined. They aren't relying on willpower alone. They've raised their standards so high that discipline has become their normal way of living. It's not a matter of trying, it's a matter of being. Imagine your life 1 year from now, if you raised your standards in just 3 daily habits: your morning routine, your diet, and your use of time. Imagine the strength, clarity, and opportunities that would flow into your life. Now imagine 5 years. The trajectory is extraordinary. Your standards in habits are the most powerful tools. You have to shape your destiny. Every choice you make is either casting in a vote for your highest self or for the self that settles. So, let this be your declaration. I will raise my standards in the small things, for I know the small things are what create the big things. Because in truth, success is not an accident. Happiness is not an accident. Growth is not an accident. They are the natural results of high standards, lived daily through consistent, intentional habits. The quality of your life will always be influenced by the quality of the people you surround yourself with. No matter how strong you believe you are not immune to influence. The people closest to you shape your thoughts, your habits, and even your vision for the future. Think of it this way: if you spend time with people who constantly complain, you will find yourself complaining. If you spend time with those who take risks, dream big, and act with courage, you will find yourself thinking and behaving the same way. Humans mirror one another. It is part of our nature. That is why raising your standards must include raising the standards of the company you keep. You may have heard saying you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. It is more than just a phrase. It is a truth that plays out in every area of life. If those 5 people are negative, unmotivated, and careless, their energy will weigh on you like an anchor. But if those 5 people are disciplined, driven, and supportive, they will lift you higher than you could ever climb alone. Let me share an example. Imagine 2 students who both enter the same university. The first joins a group of friends who are casual about their studies, who spend nights partying, who see passing grades as good enough. Over time, even if this student began with ambition, he adapts to the group's rhythm. His standards sink. His grades suffer. The second student finds friends who set goals, who discuss ideas, who encourage one another to aim higher. Even when this student feels tired or unmotivated, the group pulls him forward. His standards rise, not because he is always disciplined, but because he is surrounded by people who demand more of themselves, and, by association, more of him. This is the quiet power of influence. It can drag you down, or it can elevate you. The choice is yours. Now, raising your standards in relationships doesn't mean cutting people out harshly or judging others as unworthy. It means being intentional about where you invest your energy. Some people may remain in your life, but you must place limits on how much of their mindset you allow to seep into yours. Ask yourself, do the people closest to me encourage my growth? Or do they hold me back? Do they celebrate my progress? Or do they feel threatened by it? Do they challenge me to live up to my highest potential? Or do they make me comfortable with mediocrity? Your answers to these questions reveal whether your current circle matches the life you want to build. It takes courage to let go of relationships that no longer serve you. Sometimes it means stepping into solitude for a while until you find those who align with your vision. But remember, this loneliness is temporary. Settling for the wrong company is permanent. It is far better to walk alone on the right path than to walk with a crowd heading in the wrong direction. When you raise your standards for the people in your life, you begin to attract individuals who resonate with those higher standards. Like attracts like. A person committed to growth is naturally drawn to others who value growth. A person with integrity will find themselves surrounded by others who live with integrity. Your standards act as a filter, repelling what does not belong and welcoming what does. And here is a deeper truth. You must also become the kind of person you wish to attract. If you want disciplined, uplifting, inspiring people in your life, you must first embody those qualities. Do not simply wait for better company. Become better company. The world reflects who you are, not who you wish to be. So take inventory of your relationships. Decide where boundaries are needed and where investment is worthwhile. Seek mentors who have walked further than you, friends who believe in your dreams, and partners who respect your vision. Surround yourself with those who remind you not of who you are, but of who you can become. Because in the end, the people around you are not just companions on the journey. They are the winds that either push your sail forward or tear it apart. Choose them with wisdom. Choose them with courage. Choose them with the standards of the life you are building. Most people focus on raising their standards in the visible areas of life: work, finances, health, relationships. But few stop to realize that the foundation of all progress begins with emotional standards. The way you manage your emotions dictates the quality of your decisions, the stability of your relationships, and the peace you carry within. Think about it: two people can face the exact same challenge, but their emotional standards determine their response. One reacts with anger, frustration, and blame, while the other responds with patience, resilience, and clarity. The difference isn't in the challenge itself. It's in the level of emotional standard they've set for themselves. When you set low emotional standards, you allow circumstances to control you. A rude comment ruins your day. A small inconvenience derails your focus. The traffic, the weather, the mistakes of others, all of it holds power over your peace. And as long as you live this way, you live as a prisoner to the unpredictable. But when you decide to raise your emotional standards, you reclaim your power. You say to yourself, "I refuse to let small things steal my joy. I refuse to hand over control of my peace to external situations." That declaration alone begins to shift everything. Consider for a moment what life would look like if you raised your emotional standards today. Imagine choosing calm instead of chaos, patience instead of anger, forgiveness instead of resentment. The world would feel different. Not because the world has changed, but because you have. Rising your emotional standards does not mean denying your feelings. It does not mean suppressing anger, sadness, or frustration. Instead, it means holding yourself accountable to how long you allow those emotions to control you. Everyone gets angry. But will you stay angry for hours? Or will you choose to return to peace quickly? Everyone feels fear. But will you let it paralyze you? Or will you move forward in courage anyway? Emotional standards are like setting rules for your inner life. For example, I will not argue over small matters. I will not gossip or spread negativity. I will not carry resentment longer than a day. I will not allow fear to stop me from pursuing what matters. These are standards. They are lines you draw in the sand that protect your peace of mind. Think of great leaders, visionaries, or simply wise individuals you admire. They are not people who never face hardship. Rather, they are people who have chosen to master their emotions instead of being mastered by them. They do not collapse under stress. They do not let insults weaken them. They live by higher emotional standards, and as a result, they lead others with clarity and strength. Now ask yourself, what are my current emotional standards? Do I let the smallest irritation control me? Do I replay negative experiences in my mind for weeks? Do I allow fear and self-doubt to silence me? These reflections are not for judgment, but for awareness, because awareness is the beginning of change. When you raise your emotional standards, life becomes lighter, relationships improve, because you are no longer quick to react. Work becomes easier because you focus on solutions instead of problems. Inner peace grows because you stop giving energy to what doesn't deserve it. Of course, this requires practice. It requires catching yourself in the moment of reaction and choosing differently. At first, it may feel difficult, but every time you hold yourself to a higher emotional standard, you strengthen that inner muscle. Over time, it becomes natural. Remember, happiness is not found in perfect circumstances. It's found in higher standards for how you respond to circumstances. You may not control everything in life, but you always control your standards. So decide today, I will raise my emotional standards. I will choose patience over anger. I will choose peace over chaos. I will choose forgiveness over bitterness. And in doing so, I will free myself to live a life of strength, clarity, and unshakable calm. Excellence is not a gift given to the lucky few. It is a standard that anyone can choose. Too often, people imagine excellence as an extraordinary act performed once in a while, something reserved for champions or geniuses. But in truth, excellence is nothing more than consistently choosing to do ordinary things extraordinarily well. Look around at the people who stand out in their fields. Whether it's a teacher, an athlete, a leader, or an artist, what sets them apart is not talent alone. It is the standard they hold themselves to in their work. They do not accept good enough. They do not stop at the bare minimum. Their standard is to give their best, even when no one is watching. Think of a craftsman shaping a piece of wood. He could rush through the job, leaving rough edges and imperfections. Or he could take his time, sanding carefully, smoothing every corner, until it reflects his pride. The difference between mediocrity and mastery lies in the standard the craftsman sets for himself. Excellence, then, is not about applause. It is about integrity. It is about doing your work with pride, because it represents who you are. When you raise your standards at work, you change the quality of your results, but more importantly, you change the quality of yourself. You begin to carry yourself differently. Your confidence grows because you know you are someone who does not settle for less, and people notice. Excellence is magnetic. It attracts trust, respect, and opportunities. Consider this when you walk into a restaurant. You can tell instantly if the staff holds high standards. It shows in the cleanliness of the space, the warmth of the service, the care in the food. Those little details communicate a commitment to excellence. Customers return, not just because of the product, but because of the feeling created by those standards. In the same way, your work, no matter what it is, sends a message about the standards you live by. Ask yourself honestly, What standards have I been bringing to my work? Do I settle for just enough? Or do I strive to give my best? Raising your standards does not necessarily mean working longer hours or pushing yourself into exhaustion. It means choosing quality over shortcuts, effort over laziness, consistency over excuses. Excellence doesn't come from doing everything. It comes from doing the right things well, again and again. There will be days when motivation is low, when recognition is absent, when the reward seems distant. Those are the moments that reveal your standards. Do you cut corners when no one is looking? Or do you continue to give your best? Because that is simply who you are. Excellence becomes effortless once it becomes part of your identity. When you tell yourself, I am someone who does things with care. I am someone who delivers my best, no matter what. You no longer need external pressure. Your own standards pull you upward. The truth is, excellence creates freedom. The person who lives by high standards never has to fear being overlooked for long. They may not be rewarded instantly, but their consistency makes them unforgettable. Excellence builds reputation, and reputation builds doors that shortcuts can never unlock. Remember this: mediocrity is crowded. The majority of people settle. So competition is fierce at the bottom. But the higher you raise your standards, the thinner the air becomes. Few are willing to climb that high. Excellence places you in a league where opportunities flow naturally, because you are no longer like the rest. So, whether you are sweeping floors, writing reports, designing buildings, or leading a team, do it with excellence. Not because the world demands it, but because you demand it of yourself. Make excellence your personal standard and let it echo in everything you touch. As the old wisdom toasts, if you are going to do something, do it so well that people cannot help but notice. Excellence is the signature you leave on your work, and your work is the signature you leave on the world. One of the greatest reasons people live beneath their potential is not because they lack intelligence or ability, but because they lack boundaries. They struggle with one simple word: no. At first glance, no seems negative. It feels like rejection, like turning down opportunities, or even hurting others. But in truth, saying no is one of the most empowering acts you can practice. It is the act of drawing a line that protects your time, your energy, and your vision. Think about your life for a moment. How many times have you said yes to something you didn't really want to do? Perhaps you agreed to a social event that drained you, or you accepted work that added stress, but no real growth. Each time you said yes to the wrong thing, you unintentionally said no to something far more valuable: your health, your goals, your peace of mind. Every yes has a hidden cost. The question is, are you paying that cost willingly? Or are you sacrificing the life you want because you cannot say no? Raising your standards requires the courage to value yourself enough to protect what matters most. When you say no to what weakens you, you are simultaneously saying yes to what strengthens you. No to endless distractions means yes to progress. No to toxic people means yes to peace. No to overcommitment means yes to focus. There's a powerful truth here. Life is always offering you more options than you can handle. If you do not filter them through your standards, you will drown in demands that do not serve your purpose. Let me share an example. Imagine a young professional who wants to grow in their career. Every day, they receive requests. Friends wanting to hang out late. Coworkers asking them to pick up extra work. Family pulling them into unnecessary drama. Without the courage to say no, this person becomes scattered, exhausted, and unproductive. But the moment they begin to guard their time with a firm no, everything changes. Suddenly, there's energy for learning, space for deep work, and clarity to focus on goals. By saying no to less important things, they unlock a greater version of themselves. You may wonder, won't people be disappointed if I say no? Yes, some might be. But understand this. People who truly value you will respect your boundaries. Those who try to guilt you into lowering your standards are often very people you need to distance yourself from. Saying no is not cruelty. It is clarity. It is a declaration that your life has direction. It is the language of self-respect. And make no mistake, saying no is difficult at first, especially if you have lived much of your life as a people pleaser, seeking approval or avoiding conflict. But courage grows with practice. The first no may feel heavy. The second no may feel awkward. But soon, no becomes natural, and you realize it is not a wall to keep life out. It is a gatekeeper that allows in only what deserves a place in your world. Here is a principle to remember. Every strong yes requires 100 quiet no's. If you want to write a book, you must say no to countless distractions. If you want a healthy body, you must say no to unhealthy temptations. If you want peace, you must say no to arguments not worth fighting. Your destiny is not shaped by the things you accept. It is shaped by the things you refuse. So, reflect for a moment. Where do you need to say no? Which relationships, habits, or commitments are lowering your standards? Have the courage to face them honestly. Because when you do, you reclaim control over your life. The courage to say no is the courage to live with intention. And the higher you raise this standard, the more you will notice how life begins to align with your deepest values. Money is not just about numbers. It is about standards. The way you treat your finances is a reflection of the standards you hold for your life. Many people dream of wealth, but they tolerate habits that lead to struggle. They spend impulsively, live paycheck to paycheck, and avoid responsibility. This is not a financial problem. It is a standards problem. When you raise your financial standards, you begin to demand more order, more clarity, and more discipline in the way you manage money. And with that shift, everything changes. Think of a person who allows clutter to pile up in their home. Slowly, the mess begins to overwhelm them until they can no longer see the floor beneath their feet. Finances work the same way. When you let small, poor decisions stack up, overspending here, ignoring bills there, the clutter grows. Eventually, you feel trapped. But when you set a standard of financial cleanliness, the clutter disappears. You see clearly, you move freely, and you regain control. So, what does it mean to raise your financial standards? It begins with refusing to live in chaos. It means creating systems, however simple, that protect your money instead of wasting it. It means telling yourself, I will no longer spend recklessly. I will no longer ignore my future. I will no longer allow money to control me, because I will control money. Start small. Decide that you will save at least a portion of every amount you earn, no matter how little. This habit alone communicates a powerful standard that you value security over momentary pleasure. Imagine how different your future becomes if you begin today, even with the smallest amount. Next, raise the standard for how you spend. Too many people treat spending as a reflex, not a choice. They buy things they do not need to impress people they do not know, and then wonder why peace never comes. Higher standards mean asking yourself before every purchase, does this align with the life I want, or is this a distraction? Financial standards are also about earning. Ask yourself, am I demanding excellence in the work I do? Am I seeking growth, learning new skills, and creating value? People who raise their standards at work often raise their income as a result. The marketplace rewards those who refuse mediocrity. Another vital standard is honesty with yourself. Too often, people hide from their financial reality. They avoid looking at their bank accounts or calculating their debt because it feels uncomfortable. But remember, this discomfort is the birthplace of change. If you are willing to face the truth with courage, you will gain the power to transform it. There is also a deeper reason to raise your financial standards: freedom. Money is not about luxury, it is about choice. When you live with discipline and respect for your finances, you give yourself the freedom to make better decisions. Freedom to leave a toxic job. Freedom to travel. Freedom to invest in your growth. Freedom to help those you love. Without standards, money chains you down. With standards, it sets you free. Of course, raising your financial standards is not an overnight change. It is a process of commitment, discipline, and consistency. Some days it will feel difficult, and you may be tempted to fall back into old patterns. But remember, every standard you enforce builds strength. Every time you say no to unnecessary spending, you say yes to your future. Your finances are a mirror of your self-respect. If you respect yourself, You will respect the resources entrusted to you. Treat money as a tool, not a master. Treat it as a servant that obeys your vision, not a tyrant that controls your life. So ask yourself now, what financial standards do I need to raise today? What habits must I release? And what new ones must I adopt? The answers to these questions will shape not only your bank account, but also your confidence, your independence, and your peace of mind. Remember this truth: money amplifies who you already are. If you are careless, it will magnify carelessness. If you are disciplined, it will magnify discipline. By raising your standards today, you set the stage for a life of stability, freedom, and abundance. Rising your financial standards is not just about wealth. It is about dignity, self-respect, and the freedom to live life on your terms. The moment you choose to demand more from yourself financially is the moment you unlock a brighter, freer future. At the core of every standard you set in life lies one powerful truth: self-respect. Without it, all your efforts collapse. You can raise your standards in work, relationships, habits, and health. But if you do not respect yourself deeply, you will always return to old patterns. Self-respect is the foundation upon which a better life is built. Think about this. When you truly respect yourself, you naturally demand better. You refuse to tolerate disrespect from others. You say no to what drains your energy. You stop compromising your values for temporary comfort. But when self-respect is absent, you will find yourself saying yes to things that harm you, staying in places you don't belong, and accepting far less than you deserve. Self-respect is not arrogance. It is not pride. It is a quiet strength, an inner knowing that says, I am worthy of more, and I will not betray myself to please others. Imagine a person who respects themselves deeply. How do they walk? How do they speak? How do they treat their body and their time? You'll notice something different about them. They carry themselves with dignity, not because they think they're better than anyone else, but because they know their worth. And because they know their worth, they protect it. One of the clearest ways to measure your self-respect is to look at the boundaries you keep. Do you let people speak to you in ways that diminish you? Do you let others drain your energy with constant negativity? Or do you have the courage to walk away when something no longer aligns with who you are becoming? Boundaries are not walls to keep people out. They are gates to protect the value within. And that value is you. Another reflection of self-respect lies in how you treat your body and mind. If you constantly neglect your health, ignore your rest, or feed yourself with things that weaken you, it's a sign that your standards are too low. To respect yourself is to take care of yourself, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. It means choosing growth over stagnation, healing over avoidance, and strength over weakness. Think about your goals. Do you pursue them with commitment, or do you abandon them at the first sign of difficulty? Self-respect means honoring your word, even to yourself. When you make a promise, whether it's to wake up earlier, to exercise, or to save money, you follow through. Each time you keep a promise to yourself, your self-respect grows. Each time you break it, your standards shrink. Self-respect also shows in the company you keep. When you value yourself, you surround yourself with people who reflect that value. You no longer chase validation from those who don't care for you. You no longer tolerate friendships or relationships that make you feel small. Instead, you attract people who honor you because your own respect for yourself sets the tone. But here's the most important truth: self-respect is not something you wait for others to give you. It begins within. You don't need permission to value yourself. You don't need applause to live with dignity. It is a choice, a standard you set, that from this moment forward, you will treat yourself as someone worthy of excellence. When you embody self-respect, everything in life shifts. Your relationships grow healthier. Your work becomes stronger. Your presence commands quiet respect, without you ever asking for it. And perhaps most importantly, you begin to feel a deep peace within because you are no longer betraying yourself to fit in or to be liked. Self-respect is the highest standard of all. Raise it, and every other standard in your life rises with it. Lower it, and everything else falls. So ask yourself now, what does true self-respect look like in my life? What boundaries must I set? What promises must I keep? What habits must I honor? Answer those questions with honesty, and you will begin to see the life you've always wanted unfold. For when you truly respect yourself, the world has no choice but to respect you too. When you raise your standards, the benefits are not limited to your own life. The change that begins within you extends outward, touching the lives of others in ways you may never fully realize. Like ripples across a still lake, your choices, your behaviors, and your standards travel farther than you can see. Think about the people who inspire you. Perhaps it was a teacher who expected more from you than you thought possible. Maybe it was a leader who demanded integrity and showed unwavering discipline. Or perhaps it was a friend or family member who simply refused to settle, even when life tried to pull them down. Their standards influenced you. They raised the bar for what you believed was possible. That is the ripple effect of high standards. When you demand more of yourself, you give others silent permission to do the same. Imagine a parent who values health and discipline, choosing nourishing food, exercising daily, and carrying themselves with self-respect. Their children grow up learning that this is not exceptional, but normal. They inherit those standards as part of their worldview. Without a single lecture, without forcing change, that parent has shifted the future of an entire generation. Now imagine a workplace. One employee decides to deliver excellence, not just when it's convenient, but as a rule. They arrive on time. They take ownership of their responsibilities, and they treat others with respect. At first, others may dismiss them, but slowly, that consistency begins to influence the environment. Standards rise. The team becomes more accountable. What was once unusual becomes expected. High standards create leaders, even among those who never set out to lead. Leadership, after all, is not about titles. It is about example. The person who holds themselves to a higher standard becomes a natural guide for those around them. Without words, without force, they inspire change. But the ripple effect is not always immediate. Sometimes it begins with resistance. When you raise your standards, some people may feel threatened. They may question you, mock you, or try to pull you back down. This is natural, because your growth highlights the complacency of others. But if you remain firm, if you remain consistent, eventually the same people who doubted you will begin to respect you, or even follow you. You see, raising your standards is not just a personal act of growth. It is an act of service. Every time you demand more from yourself, you create an invisible bridge for others. You show them that discipline is possible, that self-respect is powerful, that excellence is within reach. And sometimes, that quiet example can do more to transform someone's life than any speech or advice ever could. Think of a candle in a dark room. When it is lit, it does not diminish itself by sharing its flame with another candle. Instead, the light multiplies. Soon the room is filled with brightness, and the darkness recedes. Your high standards are like that flame. They ignite others, not by force, but by presence. The ripple effect also means responsibility. You must understand that your standards are never truly private. Others are always watching. Your children, your peers, your community. If you lower your standards, you teach them that compromise is acceptable. If you remain committed, you teach them resilience. Your life becomes a silent lesson, for better or for worse. This should not feel like a burden, but a calling. The way you live is not just about you. It is about the mark you leave on the world. And perhaps the greatest legacy you can leave is not wealth, not recognition, but the example of a life lived with unwavering standards. So, as you raise your standards, remember, you are not just building your future. You are shaping the future of those around you. You are lighting the path for others to follow. You are planting seeds of excellence in the hearts of people you may never even meet. That is the ripple effect of high standards. One choice, one habit, one elevated expectation, and soon, the world around you begins to rise. As we arrive at the end of this journey, let us pause for a moment and reflect on the path we have walked together. We began with a simple truth. Your life is a mirror of your standards. Every habit, every choice, every relationship, every result you see today, each one has been shaped by the standards you set yesterday, and tomorrow will be no different. The quality of your future will not be determined by chance. It will be determined by what you are willing to demand of yourself now. Raising your standards is not a single decision. It is a lifelong commitment. It is waking up each morning and choosing not to settle. It is looking at the easy path and having the courage to take the harder, better one. It is refusing to compromise yourself. Respect. No matter how tempting comfort may seem, this is not about perfection. Perfection is an illusion, and chasing it will only exhaust you. Raising your standards is about progress, about elevation, about saying, I will not remain where I am, because I know I am capable of more. Remember, when you raise your standards, you raise your identity. You begin to see yourself not as someone waiting for life to improve, but as someone creating improvement with every action. You become the architect of your destiny. You stop asking, what can life give me? And start declaring, this is what I require of myself. And in that declaration, life reshapes itself around you. The truth is simply, you do not attract what you want. You attract what you are. If your standards are high, your life rises to meet them. If your standards are low, life falls beneath them. The choice is always yours. And here is the beautiful part, your decision to raise your standards will never only affect you. Like ripples in water, your choices spread outward. Your children will notice. Your friends will notice. Your colleagues will notice. And even those who may never meet you will feel the quiet impact of your example. You are not just building a better life. You are shaping a better world. Ask yourself now, as this audiobook draws to a close, what will I no longer tolerate? What is one area of my life where I must raise my standards today? Perhaps it is your health, your discipline, your relationships, or your self-respect. Begin there. Even the smallest step, a new habit, a new boundary, a new expectation, creates momentum. And momentum, once built, becomes unstoppable. Understand this. Raising your standards will not always be easy. There will be moments of doubt. There will be days when you want to fall back into old patterns. But in those moments, remember who you are becoming. Remember why you started. Remember that every act of discipline, every raised standard, is not just a demand. It is a declaration of your worth. So as we close, let me leave you with this truth. You are capable of more than you can imagine. You have within you the strength, the wisdom, and the courage to demand a higher life. You do not need permission to rise. You do not need approval to grow. All you need is the decision to raise your standards and never again accept less than you deserve. Raise your standards, and you will raise your life. Raise your standards, and you will raise the lives of those around you. Raise your standards, and you will leave behind a legacy of excellence that echoes far beyond your years. The journey is now in your hands. The next step is yours to take. Go, live boldly, live with honor, and live with standards so high that life has no choice but to rise and meet them. Because in the end, your standards are not just rules you follow. They are the